We live in a completely mapped, hyper-connected world, right? I mean, you can pull out your phone right now and pull up a satellite image of pretty much any street corner on the planet. But here is the paradox that I find absolutely fascinating. Even with all of this visibility, there are still black holes. Places where the map just stops, where the satellite imagery gets mysteriously blurred, and where humanity is strictly and often forcefully forbidden. So, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to explore exactly why these invisible walls still exist on our fully mapped globe.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To really wrap our heads around these restricted zones, we're going to break them down into 5 main categories: deadly forces of nature, scars of human tragedy, government and military secrets, secret societies, and finally, preserved and isolated sanctuaries. Starting off with our first category, deadly forces of nature. I want to pose this question directly to you. How deadly can nature really get? When we think of danger, we usually think of human threats, right? But the extreme, visceral, biological hazards we're about to look at, they prove that nature absolutely does not need our help to be completely unwelcoming. 1. That is the estimated number of golden lancehead vipers per square meter on Brazil's Snake Island. Now, because rising sea levels trapped these snakes in complete isolation thousands of years ago, they basically lost their ground-level prey. So to survive, they adapted. They started hunting birds in the trees, and they developed a fast-acting venom that is literally 5 times stronger than their mainland relatives. We're talking about a single bite being fatal in under an hour. It is so insanely dangerous that the Brazilian Navy has completely forbidden access to everyone. The only exception, a few heavily vetted scientists, and they have to bring a doctor with them just to set foot on the island. And you know, this perfectly illustrates the jarring contrast nature can throw at us. Take Indonesia's Kawah Ijen crater. From a distance, it is this breathtaking tourist view featuring a stunning turquoise acid lake. But then you contrast that with the grim reality of the working conditions at the crater floor. That area is totally forbidden to tourists because it's essentially an apocalyptic landscape of high-pressure sulfur dioxide fumes and literal electric blue fire. Yet local miners are working in these lung-searing conditions, hauling up to 200 pounds of sulfur on their backs, all for the equivalent of just $10 to $15 a day. It's this wild place where a pristine landscape doubles as a highly toxic workplace. But sometimes, these natural blockades lead to horrific historical events. Take Ramri Island in Myanmar. It's essentially a natural fortress made of mangrove swamps, and it is ruled by massive saltwater crocodiles. During World War II, back in February 1945, a force of nearly 1,000 retreating Japanese soldiers was forced into this swamp. And what happened next was just a night of pure terror that completely decimated the trapped army. It is a really stark reminder of what happens when human conflict collides with a prehistoric force of nature that has literally never lost a battle on its home turf. Moving on to Section 2, Scars of Human Tragedy. 400 times. That is how much more radiation the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster released compared to the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. To put that into perspective, this single technological failure created a 30-kilometer exclusion zone that remains one of the most forbidden places on Earth to this day. And sure, wildlife has deceptively returned, but the danger is invisible, and it is completely silent. The ground itself, the water, the buildings, they're all poisoned, and they are going to stay that way for millennia. It's essentially a frozen ghost land where the soil itself acts as a weapon. Human tragedy also leaves deep historical scars. Look at Povlia, a tiny island right in the Venetian lagoon. Its history is incredibly dark. First, it was a lazaretto for the bubonic plague, basically a dumping ground for the sick. Local legend actually claims that its soil is 50% human ash and bone. Then, fast forward to 1922, a massive asylum was constructed there, which of course fueled all sorts of rumors about cruel medical experiments. By 1968, the whole place was completely abandoned. Today, the Italian government strictly forbids any public access. So you have Venice, a city that sells romance and light to the whole world, quietly keeping centuries of unimaginable human suffering quarantined just out of sight. Which brings us to Section 3, Government and Military Secrets. So the crucial point here is this concept of the closed city, an idea that was really perfected by the Soviet Union. We are talking about entire towns that were just completely wiped from official maps. Now, while a lot of them eventually opened up, Mezhgorye in Russia remains strictly forbidden to this day. Sitting right at the foot of Mount Yamantau, satellite imagery has revealed this massive, highly secretive underground excavation project.
Analysts suspect it's a colossal nuclear bunker and doomsday command center designed to house tens of thousands of people. It's a whole city whose sole purpose is to survive the end of the world, heavily guarded by the Russian military.
But different global powers operate in the shadows in very different ways. Over in the US, we have Area 51, where the absolute secrecy surrounding Cold War experimental spy planes, like the U-2 and the SR-71, unintentionally fueled decades of alien mythology. Then, over in North Korea, there's Room 39. This isn't even a physical location on a map. It's a highly classified, state-run/fund that generates foreign currency for the ruling family through allegedly illegal global operations. And finally, you have Pine Gap in the Australian outback. It's a massive joint U.S.-Australian satellite surveillance nerve center that intercepts global electronic communications. It was built way out in the middle of nowhere, specifically to ensure absolute silence for all that eavesdropping.
All right, let's look at Section 4, Secret Societies and Elites. Now, what's really interesting here is the official motto of the Bohemian Grove, which is, "Weaving spiders come not here." If you're not familiar, the Bohemian Grove is this highly secure 2,700-acre redwood forest retreat in California for some of the world's most powerful men. We're talking presidents, CEOs, and media moguls. The model employs that outside business and networking are supposed to be left at the gate. But given the intense secrecy, the heavily guarded perimeter, and reports of off-the-record political shaping, like Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan reportedly agreeing on the 1968 presidential run while they were there, it stands as a powerful symbol of elite, unchecked influence.
And beyond the Bohemian Grove, we have Skull and Bones at Yale University. They tap just 15 seniors a year, demanding lifelong loyalty within a windowless headquarters known as the Tomb. It is literally an institution of open learning hiding a deeply locked vault of power. Then let's consider the P2 Lodge in Italy. This wasn't just some social club. Under Licio Gelli, it operated as a true state within a state. We're talking about a deep state shadow government made up of generals and judges that was ultimately exposed and outlawed in 1981. These groups really highlight how the ultimate forbidden place is very often just a closed room where power is consolidated.
Finally, we've reached Section 5, Preserved and Isolated Sanctuaries.
Let's move to this and see how it builds, because ecological succession in a completely isolated environment is fascinating. In 1963, a sterile volcanic eruption created a brand new island off the coast of Iceland called Surtsey. Now, to protect this pristine natural laboratory, the Icelandic government completely forbade human access. Literally, only a few heavily vetted scientists are allowed to visit, and they have to be rigorously cleaned before they go so they don't introduce any foreign microbes. By blocking us out, scientists have been able to watch ecological succession happen in real time, from the arrival of the very first seeds to insects and birds, all the way to a thriving ecosystem. We are forbidden so that life can figure out how to build itself from scratch.
Let's finish by contrasting two very different types of human preservation. First, we have hostile isolation, North Sentinel Island. The Sentinelese people have lived uncontacted for an estimated 60,000 years. They are fiercely independent and respond to outsiders with lethal force, which tragically resulted in the death of an American missionary back in 2018. The 3-mile exclusion zone around the island protects them from our modern diseases. Now contrast that with private preservation, the Hawaiian island of Niihau. Purchased way back in 1864, the Robinson family has maintained this iron-willed preservation of traditional Hawaiian culture. There is no plumbing, no paved roads, and absolutely no tourism. Both of these places remain strictly off-limits to ensure their totally unique ways of life can survive our modern footprint.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer, and to one final question I want to leave you with. As you think about the venomous Snape Islands, the irradiated ghost towns, the windowless tombs of power, and those fiercely guarded sanctuaries, ask yourself, are these forbidden places just strange anomalies on our maps? Or are these invisible walls actually essential boundaries, totally necessary to protect us from nature, to quarantine our greatest mistakes, and to preserve the very few untouched things left on this fully mapped globe? Thank you so much for exploring these black holes with me.